All right, thanks for joining me. So today we're gonna take a look at this PC I bought for $725 and see if it was worth the money. Not just from the performance standpoint and the cost, but what we can do with this PC. We're gonna take a look at everything and tear it apart and see what we got for the $725. So stick with me, I'll be right back. All right, first things first, we're gonna verify what we've got here. Okay, CPUs is advertised 3950X. Memory is 32 gigs. It's set at 2133, but I'm assuming it's a 3200 or 3600. Looks like we've got a 1TB SSD, a Samsung 850 EVO, and we've got a 1TB 980 Pro. And GPUs as advertised as the 3070. We got Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, it looks like. Looks like a 2.5 gig LAN port. There's the 3950X. And the motherboard is an MSI Meg X570 Godlike. So that's a huge bonus for this build. Usually I'll clean up a PC and stuff, but I'm thinking that we're gonna end up not using this case because there's some things about this case I don't like. And I'm not sure, it looks like it's a Corsair case, and I'm not quite sure, but it has like, it opens up on this side. It also opens up on this side, so it's got like the wings thing going on, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's also kind of a weird thing because I don't know why you would want a glass panel in the back other than for pure aesthetics, and 9 times out of 10 that back side isn't going to be facing anybody, so, and plus the cable management is on that side, so just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. And it's like I said, it's not a bad case, but I don't know that this case is quite the case that I would want to sell on the marketplace. It looks like there's some screws at the top right here for each of the top hinges. The bottom hinges don't have screws, and so we're gonna start with that and then work our way through the PC and start taking it apart, all right? Yeah, I think it's slightly stripped or something. Although I don't know why they would put screws at the top. On the back side, maybe it would make sense, but on the front side, probably not. Okay, so the backside screw came out just fine. I'm assuming that the screw that was in on the front side from opening and closing it hyper tightened it and kind of started stripping it out a little. All right, well, the cable management has something to be desired. Looks like we've got some Noctua fans in a push-pull configuration on the radiator for the CPU cooler, which is, it looks like a Corsair AIO, and it's like an older model. And so this is probably gonna be useless. We don't know when this is gonna go bad. And these cable extensions are horrible. Like, they got no combs on them or anything. And there's these like weird little rubber nubs. I don't know if this is because I haven't used any Noctua fans because I think they're overrated.
GPU seems pretty clean. It's got a little bit of dust on the top, but not a lot. So I want to say that this GPU was put in more recently than the rest of this PC. All right, so and obviously the front filter's got a lot of dust on it. It's been a while since it's been blown out, it looks like. Okay, and there's the top filter. Yeah, it looks like there's some thumb screws right here. Yeah, it is 3600 megahertz as I had suspected. Just not being overclocked in the system. Did catch myself on finger, and these edges are really sharp, which, you know, to me is poor design from a safety standpoint with G.Skill. So I do like their RAM, but I don't like that design. Wow, some serious tension on these. And just that bottom, though, it looks like. Looks like there's a hub there, right there. And it looks like you got the separate pins for the front panel header, which I never really liked. It's always a pain in the butt to install. There's the 980 Pro. There's the Corsair logo right there, because I'm blind. And there's the SSD. So as you can see here, he had another PCIe cable that was running through here, right through here, but it was sitting down here. So he might have had a second GPU in this PC before he sold this off. Otherwise, I don't see any reason for it to be in there. Some interesting screws here. For the motherboard. I'm not sure if they came with the motherboard. It's got some gaskets for washers, rubber washers. Interesting. Here's an interesting power supply. 1300 watt Rosewell. All right, that's the tear down, and we'll go through these parts individually. Right, so we did the tear down, we took a look at everything, and now it's time to price everything out, see what kind of value we got for the 725. All right, so we're gonna start with the case. The case isn't really worth a whole lot. It's not that it's a bad case, it's that it's an older case. It's got certain things about it that, you know, not everybody's gonna appreciate as far as weights, buildability goes and things like that, especially if you compare it to more current gen kind of cases. You know, it just doesn't have a lot of value versus its size and weight and ease of use for building in. So yeah, so at the end of the day, we're probably talking about maybe 20, 30 bucks as far as the value goes. So I valued it at 20. The AIO and the fans, the Noctua fans, so there's 4 120 millimeter Noctua fans and 2 140 millimeter Noctua fans. And they're good fans. They're a little bit on the loud side for my preferences, but at the same time, that might be due to the fan curve not being adjusted properly. And so maybe it was louder than it could have been. Noctua historically has been a decent performer on cooling and fans, but I don't like the looks of the Noctua fans. I think I'm just not a fan of this color scheme, so it just looks ugly to me. Other people might like it, but me personally, I don't see a whole lot of aesthetic value to these. But there's the AIO as well, which is a Corsair AIO, which is an older AIO, but It's serviceable, and it probably will last at least a couple more years, if not a few more years. I value the AIO at about 30 bucks. So including the pump and the radiator. The two 14 millimeter fans I valued at $25, and the four 120 millimeter fans I valued at 60 bucks. All right, so about 15 bucks a pop. The Corsair Commander hub, I think it's the Corsair Commander hub. Anyways, it's got an LED hub and a fan and LED hub. And usually I'm not really a big fan of Corsair's hubs, but at the same time, some people like these kind of hubs, and so there's some value to it. And so I value this, along with all the wires and everything that goes with it, at $41. The extensions, I didn't really put a value on these. I mean, you can pretty much get most extension cables for about like 20 bucks, 25 bucks, sometimes 15 if they're on sale. So there's not a whole lot of value here. I might be able to reuse some of this stuff or use some of these as extras. But for the most part, you know, not a whole lot of value. So I didn't really, I put a $0 value on the extensions for now. We got two drives. One's a 2.5-inch SSD, the 850 EVO. I think I said earlier it was a 880 EVO. It's a 850 EVO 1 terabyte and a 980 Pro 1 terabyte. And so the 980 Pro 1 terabyte I valued at $100, and the 850 EVO I valued at 50 bucks. The G.Skill kit that I cut my finger on, no, I'm not flipping you off, so, okay, maybe I am, but the RAM that I cut myself on while I was removing stuff, this is DDR4 G.Skill Trident Z Neo, and they're 3,600 megabytes with a CL16, and it's a 32 gigabyte kit, so 16 gig sticks, and they're RGB. And I valued these at $79. The Roswell 1300 watt power supply, it's an 80 plus gold power supply. It's called the Lightning 1300, and it's got those 5-pin cylindrical connectors on it, which I have no idea why they chose to do it that way. Maybe they were trying to stand out and look different, but I think it's an RGB kind of, it looks like it's an RGB kind of power supply. And you know, it's a decent power supply. I mean, 1,300 watts, and I think the 12 volt rail, yeah, the 12 volt rail is almost at 1,300. It's at 1,296, so it's a pretty efficient power supply too. And looking at this power supply, I valued it at $72, partially because although it's a 1,300 watt power supply, this power supply is missing some cables. I'm sure you could potentially look for it and find the proper cables for this, but it is missing a few cables on it. So, all right, so the 3070, this is a Zotac Gaming RTX 3070 amp hollow, H-O-L-O, so hollow, right? Oh. All right. So this is, I put a value on it of $241 for the RTX 3070. The 3950X CPU is it's still a pretty good and decent performing CPU. It's actually kind of up there. And that one I valued at $197. The motherboard is the MSI Meg X570 Godlike, and it's a AM4 socket motherboard, and so there's still some upgradability beyond the 3950X that's in there. You can go all the way up to the 5950X for it. And so it's a pretty good motherboard. It's actually currently still has a decent amount of value to it. And so the motherboard itself, I valued at $350. All right. So how do we end up? I spent $725 for this PC. And if we add up the total amount of everything, we come out at $1,265, which is a potential of about $540 profit. Maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, depending on how the market is at the time that we sell these components, if we chose to sell these components. I could also potentially look at putting these components back together in a different case, or even parting them out to different builds across multiple builds, 2 or 3 different builds, and sell those off like that. And so it's possible that I could get more value out of that. I could certainly get more content out of that, but I'm not sure what I want to do with these parts at this point. I haven't made up my mind. Why don't you tell me down in the comments if you think I should sell all the components off separately, or maybe as bundles, or do like 2 or 3 different builds with them, or put everything back together in a different case. So tell me down in the comments what you guys think I should do with this, and maybe I'll make a video based off of that, depending on the number of comments I get. In the meantime, thanks for joining me, and I hope to see you in the next one.